Picture this: you worked for 45 years, you paid your taxes, raised a family, showed up every single day, and now you have finally reached retirement age in Australia. But there is one detail that changes everything about what happens next. You do not own your home, you are still renting. And in 2026, that single fact will shape almost every decision you make from here on out. Here is what most Australians do not realise: the retirement system in this country was built around one big assumption, that by the time you stop working, you will own your home outright. That assumption is now falling apart. According to the latest Grattan Institute research, two-thirds of retirees who rent in the private market are living below the poverty line. So let's talk about what retirement actually looks like if you are a renter in Australia today, and more importantly, what you can do about it if you are still a few years out. Let's start with the numbers. The full-age pension for a single person in 2026 sits at around $1,200 per fortnight, or roughly $31,000 a year. For a couple combined, it is close to $47,000 a year. On top of that, if you are renting, you may be eligible for Commonwealth rent assistance. The maximum is around $219 a fortnight for a single person and about $206 combined for a couple. Sounds helpful until you look at what rent actually costs in Australia right now. The median rent across capital cities is now $724 per week. That is close to $1,450 a fortnight. So even at the maximum rent assistance, a single pensioner is covering only about 15% of a typical city rent. The rest has to come out of that $1,200 fortnightly pension. Do the maths, and you are left with almost nothing to pay for food, electricity, gas, water, phone, internet, transport, medications, clothing, and anything else life throws at you. And that is assuming everything goes to plan. One dental emergency, one car repair, one unexpected medical bill, and the whole budget collapses. This is the reality of what politicians call a safety net. In practice, it is a tightrope, and most retired renters are walking it without a harness. This is why the ASFA retirement standard tells a completely different story for renters. A homeowner needs about $99,000 in super for a modest retirement. A renter in the same situation needs closer to $385,000. And for a comfortable retirement, single renters are now being told they need around $659,000 in super. That is $337,000 more than a homeowner needs for the exact same lifestyle. The reason is simple: rent never stops. A mortgage eventually gets paid off. Rent goes up every 12 months for the rest of your life. And unlike a mortgage, you have no control over how much it goes up by. Your landlord could sell tomorrow. The new owner could raise the rent by $100 a week or hand you a notice to vacate. And there is very little you can do about it at 72 years old with a walking frame in the hallway. The Australian Housing and Urban Research Institute estimates that by 2031, around 440,000 older households will be unable to find or afford suitable housing. That is grandparents moving into share houses, people in their 70s applying for social housing with wait lists that stretch for years, retirees living in caravans, in cars, or moving in with adult children who are already stretched by their own mortgages. So how did we get here? Three big shifts. The first is housing prices. In the 1980s, a home in Sydney cost about 3 times the average annual income. Today, that number is closer to 13 times. The second shift is superannuation. Super only became compulsory in 1992, which means many people currently retiring have had it for less than half their working lives. The third shift is life expectancy. Australians are living longer than ever. A 65-year-old today can expect to live into their mid-80s. That is 20 or more years of rent to fund, with a pension that was never designed to carry that load. Now here is the part you actually need to hear. Because if you are watching this and you are 45, 50, 55, and you do not own your home, you still have time. And there are real moves you can make right now that will change what your future looks like. The first move is understanding your real number. Forget the generic retirement calculators that assume you own a house. If you're going to rent in retirement, your target super balance needs to be significantly higher. Sit down and work out what your rent will realistically look like in 20 years, add your basic living costs, and reverse engineer the super balance you need to draw from. For most renters aiming for even a modest lifestyle, you are looking at $400,000 to $650,000 in super. That number might feel confronting, but knowing it is the first step to hitting it. The second move is salary sacrificing into super. This is one of the most powerful tools available to any Australian, and most people do not use it properly. Every dollar you salary sacrifice is taxed at 15% inside super instead of your marginal tax rate, which for many workers is 32.5% or higher. That difference alone can add tens of thousands of dollars to your final balance. If you are earning $80,000 a year and you sacrifice an extra $100 a week over 15 years with compound growth, you could add more than $130,000 to your super. The third move is thinking seriously about home ownership, even later in life. It does not have to be a 4-bedroom house in Bondi. It could be a small unit in a regional town. It could be a townhouse 2 hours from the city. The goal is not the property itself. The goal is removing rent from your retirement equation. Because the single biggest financial difference between a comfortable retiree and a struggling one in almost every study done in Australia is whether or not they own the roof over their head. The fourth move is building income outside of super. Dividend-paying shares, ETFs, a small side business, rental income if you can manage it. Anything that creates cash flow that is not tied to your salary. Because when you retire, your salary disappears. What replaces it will decide the quality of the next 25 years of your life. And the fifth move is location. Retirees who rent in Hobart, Adelaide, or regional Queensland have a dramatically different experience to those trying to rent in Sydney or Melbourne. The same $1,200 fortnightly pension goes twice as far in some parts of Australia. Being open to moving, either before or during retirement, can be the difference between poverty and peace of mind. Here is the honest truth. The Australian retirement system is not broken for everyone. It works reasonably well if you own your home. But if you rent, the system was not built with you in mind, and waiting for the government to fix it is a plan built on hope. The Grattan Institute is pushing for a 50% increase in rent assistance for singles, and that would help. But even if it passes tomorrow, it will not be enough on its own. So if you are watching this and feeling worried, that is fair. But worry without action does nothing. Pick one of those 5 moves and start this week. Open your super account and check your balance. Call your fund and ask about salary sacrifice. Sit down with your partner and have the conversation about where you actually want to live in your 70s. Small decisions made now compound into completely different outcomes later. Australia is a wealthy country, but wealth in this country is concentrated in property, and if you are locked out of that, you have to build your own path. The good news is that path exists. It is harder than it should be, but it is walkable. If this video helped you see your situation more clearly, do me a favor and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you there.